today I want to share a personal story with you about how hard it can be, even far along on our personal development journey, to share our boundaries and to set those boundaries. Hey everyone, I'm Sonia, and on this channel, I strive to give you tips and strategies for attachment style healing and other ways to live your best life. So, boundaries, it's something that I came to relatively late in life, on my personal development journey, particularly as I started to deal with my then fearful avoidant attachment style. And, I just have this recent, I guess I should say first that I feel like, understanding boundaries rather than just thinking that they were unnecessary before. That was like a huge step, starting to set them in my relationship in other ways. Pretty small ways, I'd say, that I've done it over time, which is kind of heeding the advice I often give here, which is to start with small ways of setting boundaries to get the practice, and not to just overlook things that you don't care as much about because it gives you that good practice. In any case, far along still into this personal development journey, it can still crop up where it's difficult or we almost revert to not wanting to set them. So my example, I'm going to change the details just a little bit, but basically, there was a regular gathering that I'm part of, and someone would bring their dog to the gathering. And I actually really like dogs, so this was a big surprise to me. And it didn't happen right away, actually. But a few times in, it turned out that the dog suddenly would react to me. I don't know what it was. It must. Likely it was a rescue dog, so likely it was reacting to something from its past that was triggering it, that I was reminding it of in some way that I couldn't figure out what it was. So first it would kind of just growl and snap at me, and then there was a gathering where it actually kind of from across the room suddenly started growling at me, and then ran across the room, and I don't think it was definitely not biting down with full force, but it was enough to leave a mark and slightly tear the skin. Dog was not reacting that way with other people. Again, it's something that was triggering. I was triggering in it for some reason, and I hated that happened. And I at first, like I said, was just trying to figure out, am I moving in some certain way? But I could never figure out what it was. And it wasn't like happening all the time that this dog would do it. It would kind of do it suddenly at some point. But it did seem like this dog had sort of locked in on this idea that there was something awry with me that it did not like. And so I had to do, and I should say that the owner is someone who I know really well. Okay, so I want to set that too, that it's not a stranger. And it's not the kind of gathering, it's a casual gathering. So it's not the kind of gathering that would have rules or something like that off the bat. So basically, it probably sounds so simple to you. I just needed to ask the person not to bring the dog to the gathering, right? I was the only person having the issue. I think everyone was hoping, the owner, myself too, that it would just resolve. Like, why is this happening? It doesn't make sense that this is happening. But at that point, when there was more the partial bite, I just realized, wait a minute, like, this is ridiculous that I'm not asking for a change here, because we're talking about something that is involving my own safety, and bodily autonomy and all of that. And so then I realized, I just need to say this. But it still was difficult for me. And it's funny too, because I will say also, I thought the person would absolutely be like, not necessarily be fine with it, but more like that they would immediately accede to my request, that they would not bring the dog. So I didn't think there was going to be a trouble in that sense in asking. But what it revived in me, so maybe some of you can relate to this, is all the reasons I probably did not do boundary setting in the first place all those years ago. It was more like, they're going to feel bad. Like, it was more like feeling like no one else is having the problem. Couldn't there just be a different solution? The person's going to feel like bad about what happened in the first place. All those things, taking kind of the codependency of taking care of other people's feelings and people pleasing and disregarding one's own needs. So even though I did not let that rule me, right? Obviously I went forward and did make the ask. And as I thought, she immediately said, that's fine. We won't bring the dog. But I think what's interesting is just to note that that can happen where we still have that stirred up to whatever degree, even later, even like later when we've worked on stuff. So it's not that we won't still have those feelings or that some of those patterns don't rear up or some of those thoughts. The key is that, I'd had some practice in boundary setting. I'd really gotten clear on why it was so important. I'd learned to take charge and, really ask for my own needs and boundaries and understood why it's so important and that it affects relationships negatively when you don't. Right? It wouldn't have been good for my relationship with that person if I just hadn't said anything. But most importantly, like it wouldn't have been good for my relationship with myself, right? Because I would not be protecting myself. So I guess I just wanted to share this so you know that whatever it is for you, that may seem like an easy thing, who knows? But for you, it'll be something different probably if you've had trouble setting boundaries in the past. At some point, it'll crop up where your mind tells you, it'd be just so much easier not to do this and all these various reasons why. And just understand that that's natural, that that's going to come up. But ultimately, tell your inner self that's saying that, you know what, though? This is really important. I need to stand up for myself. It's going to be okay. Even in cases where someone does push back, it is still okay. So I wanted to say that too, because in this case, I kind of knew the person wouldn't push back, but even if they had pushed back, I would have insisted, and it is okay to do that. Usually if people have some sort of reaction, it's just temporary in the moment. Like maybe it is because they feel bad and then they get defensive or something like that. So absolutely persist even in that case. And if it was a real case where someone wasn't honoring your boundaries, then you would want to reconsider how much of a part they play in your life, right? But usually if there's some sort of reaction, it's much more temporary, and you can get through it. So, and it does help to have, it's uncomfortable, right? But it does help to have some of that experience with it. And so that will help you as you go forward, and there are cases where there may be more difficult boundaries to set. So hopefully you can take this as encouragement, me sharing this. And let me know if you have any comments that you would like to say about times when you had to set boundaries and how that went for you. I'd love to hear about it. And let me know too if you have any topics that you'd like me to cover.